So for some time before I read this book, I wondered why we celebrate this book every Halloween, but not this one. Then I read it. Now I know. Salutations, fellow readers, writers, and killers of time on YouTube. My name is Martha Jones, and I would like to use the androgynous sounds of my voice to share with you a few words about The Lair of the White Worm, written by Bram Stoker circa 1911, and adapted for the silver screen in 1988 by director Ken Russell. Although when I say adapted, I mean it in the sense that neither title is an outright lie. There is technically a white worm in both these stories, and neither would exist without Bram Stoker. But the resemblance between the two is pretty scant. Even the Wikipedia article on the movie shies away from the word adaptation, choosing instead to describe the white worm as loosely based on the Stoker novel of the same name. And were I to liken the book and the movie to twins, the book would not be the one played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, if you know what I'm saying. The virtues of the book include that it is short. Okay, maybe I exaggerate a little, but only a little. White Worm's brevity might not be its one and only virtue, but the non-detestable things about it are not numerous enough for me to personally recommend it for other folks' TBR. In fact, the book is so unmemorable, I kind of struggle to recall it in detail, except as it contrasts with the 1988 film. For example, the protagonist of the book is a wealthy Australian cowboy named Adam Sultan, who is summoned to England by his wealthy uncle, the elder Mr. Sultan, an aged, ailing soul who is apparently quite constipated and in medical need of someone on whom to take 2 to 3 major info dumps every single day. The movie bypasses both Adam and his uncle, opting instead to feature a Scottish archaeologist who unearths some ancient treasure, thereby precipitating all subsequent interactions with the antagonist. The book starts out slow and stays slow for a long time, principally because the elder Mr. Sultan exposits in agonizing detail the history of their little corner of England dating all the way back to Roman times, part of which does include the legend of the White Worm and its historical context.
Well, you mustn't take the word worm too literally. It's an adaptation of the Anglo-Saxon Wyrm, meaning dragon or snake. Gothic Worms, German Wurm, it's all the same word.
The film smartly condenses the bulk of this by calling the viewer's attention to some culturally significant props and employing a technique I most readily associate with Tolkien's The Hobbit, one in which people who already know what's going on bring the newcomer up to speed with an in-world piece of oral history called the folk song.
So John set out and caught the beast and cut it into halves, and that soon stopped it, eating babes and sheep and lambs and cats. Ha!
I'd actually be good with it if this trope turned up like 3,000% more than it does. It is good, expedient storytelling, and I love it beyond reason. Anyway, back to the White Worm. As happens in the movie, the foreign protagonist attends a party, at which he meets a bunch of local yokels, and takes a shine to a pair of country girls. One of them is Lilla, who is pure and good and white and wholesome and boring and pure, and the other is Mimi, Lilla's cousin, who is half Siamese, endowed with a fiery temper, and fiercely protective of her loved ones. And you know what? I don't hate Mimi. She's one of very few characters in the book that I unambiguously want to spend more time with. And what's more, Adam agrees with me. Despite other more docile girls on the premises, he goes for the one with personality and zero social prospects. Good job, Adam, at not being the worst in this one and only way. In constructing antagonists for the gallant hero, Stoker provides his readers with 3 truly lame villains who get distilled out into one pretty good one for the movie. Although, spoilers, in the book the femme fatale is the White Worm, whereas in the movie she merely works for the worm, and her bite more or less works on vampire rules, so she can turn people around her into snake-like minions whenever she feels inclined. The movie is kind of over-the-top horny in a way that the book absolutely is not. A thing said movie attempts to lampshade with various strategic and tacky placements of a literal horn. And without getting too spoilery, the movie ends on one of those nicely ambiguous notes in which some of the main characters may survive, but none of them are ever truly out of danger, whereas in the book they are never truly in danger. And if that wasn't enough to convince you to bypass this particular book in favor of its movie or perhaps a worthier read, any niceness in the book is eclipsed totally and utterly by its bounty of racism. Right, time to talk about the racism. Ready? I'm not. And if you think you are, you're mistaken. It never gets easier to talk about this kind of stuff. But we do it in hopes that with enough sun exposure, it will shrivel and die of embarrassment when it sees how silly it looks by the light of day. And I'm sorry to say that if we haven't talked about the racism, we haven't actually talked about Lair of the White Worm, because Bram Stoker uses the N-word and permutations of the N-word 40 times in the text. as well as a lot of contemptible judgment calls from author to persons of African descent. And the racism is bizarrely targeted, because my girl Mimi ends up being half of the romantic pairing, and sorta kind of a deuterotagonist by the end, and her Siamese heritage hardly ever comes up. Elsewhere in the text, the author chats about torture instruments, some of which were used on the Native Americans over in the colonies. And in context, the remark gives the impression that the author is somewhat sympathetic to the Native Americans. But when it comes to folks of African descent, Stoker uses words like primitive, ugly, debase, and devilish. And those are all words from one paragraph in chapter 13. Not your finest work, Mr. Stoker, though you'd look sweet upon the seat of a Yikes-cicle built for two. I mean, y'all have heard me say some nasty things about Lovecraft now and then, but credit where credit is due. The reason a lot of readers take great pains to eat the meat and spit out the racist, classist bones while consuming any given Lovecraft work is that at least his stories were interesting. The Lair of the White Worm is not merely racist and sexist, it is boring. Which is a shame, because it wouldn't have actually been that hard to make it interesting in an inoffensive way. For instance, the book kicks off with the elder Mr. Sultan summoning Adam to England by a letter in which he describes Adam and himself as all that remains of our race, leading me, at least, to the false hope that one of these guys might be vampires. Would it have killed you, Mr. Stoker, to take dear old Uncle So-and-so, who gets infantilized and removed from the majority of the text by well-meaning family members who feel he is too frail, too nice to deal with the White Worm in detail, and make him the big bad? Maybe give him the White Worm to keep as a backyard pet? Would have made for some great themes of generational corruption and really slick-looking houses that are built on worm-eaten foundations. But no such luck. Or what about that really interesting McGuffin you dropped in the middle of the book and then forsook? See, one of the few vista points of genuine intrigue for me in White Worm the book is when Stoker chats at length about a giant impenetrable chest. Very funny, editor me. Ahem. A giant impenetrable chest, and how the artifacts in it supposedly belonged to one Dr. Mesmer, a real-live German physician who dabbled in astronomy and whose most famous hypothesis concerns a principle he called animal magnetism, though one that might be better described in practice as mind over matter. In fact, Dr. Mesmer's name nowadays is most commonly associated with hypnosis, and the root word of mesmerize. Would have been nice to know what such a man keeps in his mystical chest, or how the current owner of the chest opens it in a nightly trance, plays with its contents, then forgets he has done so by morning. But, spoilers, Stoker never says. Thanks a lot, author man. Or fangs, if you like. There is also much ado made about a big, scary kite that the lord of a land called Castor Regis flies day and night to keep critters away from his crops, and its supernatural effects on the local inhabitants are so severe that birds stop singing, and all who live beneath its shadow recoil in despair whenever it flies. How does that work, I hear you ask? Go fly a kite, says the author. So, in short, the movie is excellent if you like legitimate horror, or a good bad movie night with your friends in the spooky season. Though, quick addendum for whatever it's worth, the most unsettling part of the film, for me, is when the hero does everything right, and even gives the local medical team a leg up on how to cure the folks with snake bites, just in case, gad forbid, more victims turn up down the road. And the doctor is so grateful for this incredible foresight and generous grant from the Keep Your Patients Alive Please Foundation that he goes home for the day, after giving the frustrated protagonist the wrong serum with which he's been trying in vain to cure his friends. So the failure of apathetic persons in power to take an outbreak seriously when there are only 2 known cases could easily lead to a 100% avoidable tragedy down the road. It's a good thing fiction is fictional and in no way reflects life, am I right? As always, thank you for giving these videos a shot. I post whenever I can. In the meantime, take it easy. Loves you. Bye.
Like my channel, buy my crap, doo-dah, doo-dah. There's no time to take a nap, oh the doo-dah day. Hey!